Hiya. So this is going to be my vlog for my review on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory the musical. I did do a written review on it, so if you want to read that you can find that at www.musicalfanboy.blogspot.com. But for those of you who don't like reading or just want to see a real person speaking, then I'm going to do a short vlog as well. And I'm not going to quite go into as much detail in this vlog. Well, I will, but not the same sort of detail. So the stuff that I wrote in my vlog, I gave a lot of details about who wrote it and who did this and who did that. I'm not going to do that so much. It's more going to be me giving my thoughts and views on it. So I went to see this musical I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, something like that. And it was in one of the previews, and that is obviously something to consider when listening to this, because what generally happens, for those of you who don't know, with any play or musical or whatever it is it will go into a stage of preview, what they call preview showings, before the actual official opening night. And what they do during this preview stage is it's like an actual performance. They'll have an audience, they'll have all the cast and all the crew and everything there, and it'll be like a real performance. But generally speaking, tickets are a little bit cheaper, and they spend the preview time changing things. So one of the things that I was told, because I saw one of the later previews, meaning they'd already changed some stuff. So one of the things that they'd done by the time I'd seen it is they'd added, for example, the Great Glass Elevator, which from another review I saw, she mentioned that it wasn't there yet. So I did see a later preview, but I needed to make that clear, because that might change my review from maybe perhaps later reviews. Generally speaking, I did enjoy the show, even though I do have a lot of critical notes, and I do criticise it in many ways. I still enjoyed it as production. It was not boring in the slightest. I never sat there and thought, I'm quite bored right now. I will admit my mind did wander off at one point, but only for like a second, and then it sort of went back to it because something happened. So it was a very enjoyable performance, and I stood up at the end, and I stood, because there was sort of a semi-standing ovation in the performance that I saw, but I stood up. Other people on my row didn't, but I did, and I applauded, and I thought it was because I thought it was a good production. It was a very good production. In terms of, I'll talk about the things that were good first. The set was phenomenal. I've never seen a set like it before. You sort of sat there, and you're sort of thinking, I was sort of thinking, now, after they use this set, where's it going? Because there's no space for that in the wings or up above. I don't know how it was so huge. It was huge, the set. There was the first act, a lot of the first act was about introducing all the kids who'd won the prizes, and they did it by Charlie goes and he's watching his little TV, little broken TV, with his dad having to plug electricity through it by riding on a bike. And then this, as he's watching it, this massive TV screen comes up behind you, and you start off and it looks like an actual TV, and there's like a video on it, and then suddenly the video rises like a curtain and it becomes a stage within a stage. And I thought that was really, really good and really effective. And I thought that worked really, really well, so I loved that. The set for all the different rooms are very, very well done. And I think something that's really important to know is, because obviously Quentin Blake was obviously the illustrator for the original novel when Roald Dahl wrote it, and I think that's something that they did particularly well, particularly in the opening scene. The opening scene is sort of in like a rubbish dump, and even that, as amazing as it was, and you could see it was crisp and clear and colourful and stuff, it was still a rubbish dump. And it still had that scrawniness that I think Quentin Blake used in a lot of his illustrations. So I thought that was done. Overall set was brilliant, as were costumes. I thought costumes were very good as well. Nice and colourful, bright, and all the things you want costumes to be in a Roald Dahl. I think a Roald Dahl performance. The only thing of set which I was a little bit disappointed about was the actual chocolate factory, the first room that they go into, where they see all the chocolate fountain and stuff. Because the chocolate fountain, it sort of is just like a beam of chocolate that goes down like that. And I sort of wanted it to be more, but then that was made up when Augustus Gloop gets sucked up the pipe. So it was sort of made up for, so that was alright. The illusions were very, very good. There were the Great Glass Elevator at the end. It rose and sort of, I was sort of looking at it thinking, now how far is that going to go? Now I was quite far back in the stall, so I couldn't actually see when it went right to the top, which was annoying, because maybe if I did I would have been able to work out how they did it. But generally speaking, setting costumes and illusions were great, and puppetry, the Oompa Loompas were brilliant. They were very, very cleverly done. I've seen several references when trying to explain how it was done to Farquaad or Lord Farquaad. Any of you who saw Shrek the Musical will know that the way Lord Farquaad moved, it was an actor on his knees with sort of fake stuffed legs coming out of him. That's how some of the Oompa Loompas worked. And then some of the Oompa Loompas were... It gave the illusion that it was sort of one Oompa Loompa on the shoulders of another Oompa Loompa. And how that's done, I actually saw one review, which was a good review, where the girl who was reviewing it said something like she couldn't work out how it was done. And basically how it's done is it's a man in a costume, and he'll have sort of a fake head coming out of his stomach area and fake legs and all things dangling off, so it gives the impression of more than one Oompa Loompa. There was one where they were riding around on giant squirrels. So altogether I was really impressed with the Oompa Loompas and thought they were really well done. I'm going to move on to music now. Now music was a really interesting one. I'm just going to grab my programme here because I've got a list of the songs in it. Now the main thing I thought with the music was when you're listening to it, it all sounds good. It sounds very nice. I thought it was very clever. I thought the music was very clever. The lyrics rather. I thought the lyrics were really clever in some of the songs. I'm just trying to find the page with the music on. Here we go. I thought that they were all very clever whilst you were listening to them, but then you sort of... I walked out of the theatre and I couldn't remember a single song except for Pure Imagination, which I've been humming for the last couple of weeks. I keep going, Pure Imagination, all over the place at random bus stops and while I'm walking along the streets and stuff. Funny looks I keep getting. But that was a good song. But all the other ones were clever. So there's one song called Strike That, Reverse It, and it was taking phrases that were like cliches. So like the phrase, it must be seen to be believed, was striked and reversed to it must be believed to be seen. And it was things like that, and the song was called it, and every so often Willy Wonka would say a phrase and then would go strike it, reverse it. So that was quite, I quite enjoyed that song, and I quite liked the song Don't You Pinch Me Charlie, because it was just a sort of very cheesy, slightly cringy, but more cheesy, which was good, song. So that was good. The song that I would just like to say I really did not like, and it was one of those things where I didn't really like this character, to be honest. Like I just didn't like. I think out of all the kids, he's my least favourite. The Mike TV. I found it very loud. All his scenes were very loud. The scene where he's introduced is very loud. His song was called Vidiots, which is obviously a combination between the word video and idiots. Vidiots, and it was sort of very robotic. I think it went something like Vidiots. And it was just a very strange song. But no, I did enjoy the music, but it's not the sort of stuff I would remember. It's the sort of stuff I would listen to, but not necessarily remember. So, generally speaking, I mean, in terms of music, I think the lyrics were better than the music. That's my sort of opinion on that. The actual book itself, and when I say book, just to explain a bit of a technical, not a technical term, but theatrical term, when you say book, when you're referring to a play or a musical, you don't mean the novel that it was based on, you mean the script is the book. So when I'm referring to the book, I'm not talking about Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I'm talking about, the script. Generally speaking, it was alright, it was fun, it was witty, it was cheesy, it was modern, yeah, they did modernise it, which was quite nice. The issue I had with it was the first act, and I knew they were going to do this. I sort of, before I sat there, I was like, now, hang on a second, when is the interval going to be? What are they going to have at the end of the first act? Because usually, at the end of the first act, there's usually a revelation, there's usually a realisation of something, and something happens so that you know where you are at the beginning of the second act. And I was like, well, what would make sense is, at the end of the first act, if that's the point where they enter the factory. And I thought, well, that's probably going to happen then, because it wouldn't make sense to do it any other time, really. Because otherwise you'd have to do it in the middle of all the kids disappearing, and I don't think that would really work. So I think they did pick the best time sort of to do it. But then what happened is the first act I felt was very dragged on. Like there was that point, I mentioned there was a point where my eyes were wandering and I was just sort of getting a bit bored a little bit, because the first act did drag on a little bit perhaps. It was very in the same place in Charlie's house, and it was just a bit dragged on. And then the second act sort of rushed through. And then it ended, the scene that I really did not like, and I can't even, I could be wrong because I don't remember it that well, but it was the last scene after, it was the scene after Mike TV's gone and Charlie's the last boy left. There was a scene between he's the last boy left and he goes up in the Great Glass Elevator. There was this random scene, and it was sort of like nothing really happened, and it was supposed to be the scene where he's like, Charlie, you've won, and it was just a bit nothingy. But generally speaking, the book was okay. And there was also a nice little twist in it with Willy Wonka and who he was and what he represents, and he was a bit more, as a character, he was a bit more magical or mysterious maybe. So that was quite nice. Now the bloke that played Willy Wonka, his name's Douglas Hodge. Now he is, from what I've read, an award-winning actor and director. The issue that I had with him personally was I didn't think he was quirky enough, and that's the word, quirky. Because if you look at someone like Gene Wilder, who played it in the original film whenever that was, ages ago, and then Johnny Depp, who played Willy Wonka in the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory film, which came out in 2005, they were both very quirky. There was something very strange about the role. There was something very strange about the character. They were very weird and very sort of... And I just felt that Douglas Hodge didn't quite do that. And I sort of had to think, well, is that your fault or is that the script's fault? And there were particular... So, for example, one of the things in the script that I really like is whenever Mike TV says something that Willy Wonka can't... or asks something that Willy Wonka can't answer, he sort of goes, you know, no one can understand you when you're mumbling. And that, I think, is something that was seen in both the films. And Gene Wilder did that very nicely. He added a quirk to it. Johnny Depp did that very nicely. And then Douglas Hodge just sort of said the line, and there was no quirkiness to it. So that's what I thought about that. And in terms of the kids, it's one of those things where all the kids in it were good. I'm really stupid because I didn't actually write down who I saw, which was really, really silly of me. I think, looking at the pictures, I think that the boy I saw play Charlie was called Tom Klenneman. I think that was him. I could be wrong, but I think that was him. And he was fine, as were all the kids. All the kids were fine, but the thing that you get with kids these days in the West End is that, you know, you've got Matilda, Billy Elliot, Shrek when it was out, now this. There's lots of kids who are very good, and there's lots of kids who are in the West End, and there was no one, for me, who stood out in this. Whereas, comparing it to Matilda, you've got characters like Bruce and Lavender and Matilda who really stand out, and I just felt that the characters in this were a little bit, you know, Charlie, he's not a very interesting character because Roald Dahl never made him an interesting character. He was always a poor young boy, and there was no twist to him, which means that I thought that you know, I think the boy that played him did a good job, but I sort of don't think there was much to do with the character. And in terms of choreography, the choreographer, whose name is Peter Darling, he choreographed Matilda. Now, I love the choreography in Matilda. I think it's so quirky and unusual and really fits the music. And I just felt in this, it was quirky. For me, there wasn't enough of it. There needed to be a little bit more. Like, it would have been nice to have seen the kids do a proper like, full show number, which I felt was sort of lacking a little bit. I mean, obviously there was choreography with the Oompa Loompas, because I guess I would normally say that the ensembles should do a big piece, and obviously the ensemble was the Oompa Loompas for most of it, so I guess there perhaps wasn't much they could do. But that's my view on that. Look, generally speaking, I would recommend it. I would say go and see it. So what I do is when I rate a show, I break it down to categories, and those categories depend on what the show is and depend on how I feel about it and things that I want to rate it on, things that, you know, stand out from that show. So certain shows I won't rate certain things on, and certain shows I will. So for example, I might, in one show, I might rate the ensemble. I might give the ensemble a rating on how they work together, either because they work very well together or they didn't work well together, but I would rate them. So for example, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I didn't rate the ensemble because it just wasn't something that stood out for me. So the things I rated is I gave 5 stars for setting costumes, and I gave 5 stars for illusions and puppetry, because they were fantastic. They really, really were. I gave 4 stars to lighting and sound, because lighting and sound, you know, I'm not an expert of lighting and sound, but I think it was used creatively and it was used nicely, so I gave that 4 stars. And lyrics got 4 stars because I thought that they were very clever. Music, book and acting got 3 stars each. So music is obviously the actual, not the lyrics, but the music. And I just felt there wasn't anything particularly wow about it, but it was fine. The book got 3 stars just because, again, I just said it dragged along a little bit and it wasn't evenly cut and I found it a little bit boring at times. But it was original, so I guess that is a good point. Acting, I gave 3 stars just because no one stood out. Everyone was fine. There was no one bad. I didn't think anyone was bad, but no one stood out. And choreography, I gave 2 stars, and it was one of those things where the reason that I rated choreography was because I felt that the guy that choreographed it is a very good choreographer, and I don't think there was enough of it, which is why I gave it 2 stars. And actually, if he spiced it up the choreography a little bit, it would have probably got more. Which overall gives it a rating of 4 stars, or to be precise, using my amazing mathematical mind, it gets a 3.6, an average of a rating of 3.6 out of 5. Which I guess is pretty good, and I mean, you know, it works out as 4 stars overall, and I would recommend it. I would say it's one of those shows that you should go and see, but don't get your hopes up, sort of thing. Go and see it, and I think you'll enjoy it. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but I'm not in a rush to go and see it again, as I am some other shows which I see and I'm like, the next day I'm like, oh my god, I need to see the show again. Where I wasn't really like that with this, I just thought it was good and I'm glad I went. So I think that's everything. In terms of my blog, which is musicalfanboy.blogspot.com, please check it out. Please leave comments. I absolutely love a debate. I love an argument. Please leave your comments and your feedback. If there's anything you liked about, if you read my blog or my vlog, if you've seen it, which you obviously have because you're looking at it now, please feel free to leave feedback on what you think I could do to improve or things that I'm doing well. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and release, I'm going to try and release a review once every week or two, obviously depending on how much I manage to get myself to the theatre, because I've been quite a bit lately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and write a load of reviews and then I'll post them 1 week at a time, just to keep it going. If I post them all at once, then I'll have nothing to write about. I'll have nothing to post. So I'm going to try and release one every week. And if there's any topics that are theatre-wise that you want me to discuss or look into or research, I'm happy to. I do get tons of emails every day from all the theatre companies, particularly stuff that's going on the West End, that sends me all the news and all the things that are going on. But if you've got anything you want to discuss, or if you want me to do a blog or a vlog about anything, or if you've got a show that you think I should go and see because it's particularly good, then please let me know. If you'd like to, you can like or comment on this video, or if you really feel like it, you can subscribe to my channel. And basically, the more comments and feedback and likes and subscribes I get, probably the more stuff I'll do, because I'll see that people are enjoying it. So please give that a go, and feel free to check out my other stuff. And I'm going to say goodbye now because this has gone on for way too long. So thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I look forward to reading all your comments. Bye.